Hi and welcome to this Revit tutorial. I'm going to tell you a bit about the system, the background of Revit, and to give you a brief description or brief table of content. First, we're going to talk about the difference between Revit and other design software, like AutoCAD or Rhino, for example, and what is the big idea behind Revit. After we are done with that, we will jump right into Revit and check out the user interface. So far so good, so let's get started. So there are two major things that are different in Revit compared to other design software, like again, Rhino, AutoCAD or stuff like that. And this is how you create and how you collaborate. When you look into AutoCAD, for example, and you want to try, or you want to create something like an owl, let's say an owl in this example, you would always start to draw lines and hatches and patterns. So you actually do 2D drawings, which might resemble, or which is supposed to resemble your actual owl, your real life owl. If you want to do, for example, an rendering, you would never do something like that in AutoCAD. You would take your 2D drawings and transfer it over to SketchUp, Rhino, Cinema 4D, you call it, and do the 3D modeling after that. And it's the same the other way around. You would never do sheets and plans and details in a software like Rhino, for example. You would do the 3D modeling in there. And after you have done that 3D modeling, you would transfer that 3D model to back to AutoCAD or to Vectorworks or whatever software. And then you would do the detailing, you would do the annotations, all that kind of stuff. And in Revit it's a bit different. Revit is always both of them. In Revit you draw and you model. So to put it more in an architectural sense, you will create a 3D model in Revit. From that 3D model you will extract different views. They might be 3-dimensional, they might be 2-dimensional. It might be a floor plan, a section, elevation, but it also might be an overview, a scheme, it might be a detail. It might be some annotations, you know. In Rhino, for example, if you want to create something like a wall, you would create an extrusion or a sweep. And in Revit, you actually work with components or objects as they are called here. An object like a wall, a door, a ceiling, a slab. Those are all objects. So therefore, this approach is called object-based. Another big thing in Revit is data. And data is always some sort of abstract term. What is data actually? Is it 1, 0? Is it text? What is it? And in a Revit sense, data is, for example, the material of your door, steel or glass. It might be the dimension, the width and the height. But it also can be the opening direction, left or right. So if we combine those two terms, the whole approach of Revit is called object-based and data-driven. And what is the big idea behind it? And what Revit wants you to do is to prototype. And prototyping, more specifically digital prototyping, is the idea of before you go to your construction site and actually start to assemble your building, you will create your building in your computer. And let's say we have that example here of an emergency exit. And what you would do with that digital prototype, you would do all those simulations in there. What is the height of that emergency? Is it really visible? How much time might it take to escape? Are the signs clearly visible? How does the smoke behave in that? This is digital prototyping. So again, before you go to your construction site, you test and simulate everything in your computer. As I said in the beginning, there are two differences: how to create and how to collaborate. And when you look at, let's say again, Rhino, each and every one of your team members will have its own file. One file might contain the facade, one file might contain the floor plan, another file might contain, I don't know, the upper floors. And in Revit it's completely different. In Revit, all of your team members will work within that same file. So it's a lot of effort, and it's really, really important that you communicate a lot. Who's working on what one's working on the walls, for example, another one's working on slabs, another one's working on facades. If you don't communicate enough, you will interfere with one another, and that might cause a lot of problems. To sum it up, Revit is always two-dimensional and three-dimensional. It's object-based and data-driven, and you work within a workshop model. So far so good, so let's jump right into Revit. So here we are. This is how it looks like when you open up Revit. And what you're going to see is over here are the most recent files you have been working on, some sample projects, and also the most recent families you have been working on. But more importantly, let's check out the windows over here on the left side. Here you're going to open or create a new model or project. And we want to create a new project in this case, so we just click on new. And we are going to be prompted a question about which template we want to use. There are some predefined templates made by Autodesk, a construction template, architectural, structural, mechanical. We're going to choose the architectural template since we are going to create a building. So, architectural template, okay. So after some loading, Revit will open up the very first level. There are some predefined things already in that template file, which are levels that might be views, that might be certain commands, and that might be certain families. Families are essentially your objects, doors, walls, and so on. And what you are going to see in that canvas over here is the very first floor, your floor plan of level 1. I would say we just start right at the top left and work our way down to the bottom right. Okay, so what you can see here is probably one of the most important tabs or the most used tab you will find, and that's the architecture tab. And under architecture you will find everything 3D related, every 3D object like walls, doors, windows, and other components like furniture, for example. If you hover with your mouse over a certain command like a door, for example, you can see the shortcut DR, and you can get a brief description of what this command is all about. In this case, it's about placing a door within a wall. You can also find rooms in here. Rooms we will see in another tutorial, later tutorial, but essentially your room will give you the area or the volume of a certain area. Structure, steel, and systems is essentially the same as architecture, but with different components in there. Under structure, you will find beams and columns, for example, but also trusses and braces, whereas under systems, you will find ducts and pipes. Under the Insert tab, you will find Link Revit, Link IFC, Link Cards. So essentially it's about linking or importing different file formats into your Revit model. I would always recommend to not importing, instead rather use Link Cut. Because if you import a DWG, for example, into your file, it might be really big and it might crash Revit. So rather use Link Cut or Link IFC or Link Revit. It's always a better choice. Under Annotate, you will find all two-dimensional elements, commands in Revit. So again, architecture, three-dimensional, annotate, two-dimensional. So two-dimensional means something like dimensions, for example, but also like spot elevations, detail lines. So those are two-dimensional lines you will mostly use. But also regions, which are, I think it's called hatch in AutoCAD. You will find two-dimensional components, detail components, for example, and also text, revision cloud, tags like room tags, door tags, that kind of stuff. Under Messing Inside, you will probably rarely use, but there are some nice commands in there. You will find trees in here, or parking lots, well, everything which is site related. Also people and cars, for example. Under the View tab, you will find everything you might need to create a new view, a floor plan, for example, or a section, as you can see, or another 3D view. We can just quickly click on it, and as you can see, a 3D view has opened up. But there are also things like floor plans, ceiling plans, area plans, all of that kind of stuff you will find under View. Also schedules, really important. The Manage tab contains all, like, let's say, options, settings for your model. You can just click on additional settings, and in here you can find things like line styles, line weights, and line patterns, for example. But also sun settings, color text, settings in the end. You can create new parameters in here, project parameters. You can check out your global parameters and your shared parameters, or you could purge unused objects. For example, if you have 3 different doors in your model and you have never used them, you can purge them in here, which I would recommend to do frequently. There's a whole lot more tabs over here, which are all plugins which I have tested in the last couple of years. So they are not from the get-go in Revit. Only if you install one of those plugins, like Enscape, for example. Those plugins you will find then over here. And the last, but probably the most used tab, is the Modify tab. And in here you will find all commands to modify your elements, your objects. Like, for example, moving, copying, rotating, or align. But what happens if I, for example, select a wall? So I just click on wall. The tab immediately moves over to our Modify tab, and another options bar has popped up. And that green options bar, in that green options bar, we can determine, for example, the height of our wall, the location line, an offset on radius. Another thing which you have not seen in before is that tiny window over here, the drawing options. So if I want to create a wall, I can choose if I want to just create a straight line, or if I want to create a rectangle, for example, or circle. It's really up to you. For that moment, I just use that straight line and see I've created a wall. Let's check it out in 3D, and there you see that's our wall. Next up is Project Browser, and the project browser you will find on the left side, and the project browser basically contains all your views, which means that every time you create a new floor plan, a new section, an elevation, detail, whatever, you will find it somewhere over here on that left side. So for example, if we go in here and right click on that level 1 floor plan and we just go to duplicate it, Revit will create a new floor plan for the level 1. And as it says it's a floor plan, you will find it in that project browser. If we go to create a new section, let's say somewhere over here, that section you will also find in that project browser, section 1. So this is our section. So again, your project browser contains all of your views, whatever that might be: elevation, section, floor plan, ceiling plan, a sheet schedule, everything you will find in here. What happens if we have multiple views opened? As you could see, I opened the level 1, the copy of the level 1 and a section, and this creates new tabs. We can align them side to side by pressing WT on our keyboard. All the same goes for view and then tile views. So we have our section over here, we have that copy over here, and we have the level 1 over there. We can minimize them or close them again by just clicking on that closing sign, or we could just press TW on our keyboard and it will maximize our current view. Another important window that you can't really see right now is our properties. And properties are laid underneath my project browser. I can just drag and drop them over here if I want to. Same goes for the project browser. Or I could then align them next to one another. And in the properties you essentially find all the parameters or the information which is associated with your currently selected element. In this case it's our section or view. And it says something like the view scale is 1 to 100. The detail model is kurz, I guess it's called in English. I don't really know how to pronounce it. And some more stuff like the name, which view template is associated to our current view, also which face. The same goes if we select an element like a wall. Then you can see our wall. We have selected a basic wall. It's a generic one which has a width of 200 millimeters. Its location line is wall center line. Its base constraint is level 1, and the top constraint is unconnected, which makes it a height of 7,000 millimeters. We could just go in here and change it to, let's say, to 2000, and it will update automatically within our model. Let's see what happens in another view when we align multiple views side to side. So this is our section. Let's open up our 3D view. We go just to view, 3D view, again WT on our keyboard. We have them side to side. And if I select that wall and that 3D view, you can see it's also selected in our section because it's essentially the same wall. I could just drag that arrow and change its height. And the unconnected height will be updated to 13,000 and something millimeters. But I also could constrain it to another level. As it says here, it's unconnected right now. I connect it to level 2. So the unconnected height is now grayed out and it has a value of 4,000 because the level of level 2 is at the elevation of 4,000 millimeters or 4 meters. And that elevation we can see over here in our section where it says 4,000 millimeters. I could just go in here, click on it and say no, it's 8,000 right now, and everything will update accordingly. So we still have there's more properties or parameters in Revit related to wall, like the length, the area, or the volume. So once I again extend the length of my wall, it will show within the length parameter. Same goes for area, same goes for the volume. Another bar we have, and that will probably be the last bar or command bar I will show you for the for the user interface, and that's down here, which is our display or graphics bar. And you find in here scale 1 to 100, 1 to 200, 1 to 500. It's the same as the property within our view. So if I change it in here to 1 to 200, for example, it will also change within our properties. It's the same parameter. Right next to our detail level, we have our visual style. Wireframe, for example, which makes every object in Revit not invisible, but you can see right through them. You know, you just only see the outer lines of that object, and everything is behind it is clearly visible. We also could go to shaded, which gives it a color, let's say. according to the material it's associated to. We could also go to realistic, which if we change the wall real quick to, let's say, brick wall, not a brick wall, let's go to something like now you can see it. If we have something like a brick wall, you could actually see the bricks. If we go to shaded, it's just a brownish color on that wall. We can turn on the shadows. As I move around, you can see it better way. There's our shadow. I can turn it off. See. And I could also change the sound settings. And say, for example, it's a lighting from the top right. Not much has changed from the top left. There you go. You could also say it's on a single day in Boston, Massachusetts on the 1st of July. And let's say, yeah, I think it's fine enough. It's almost 1 p.m. Let's take it that way. And say apply. And then you could see how or where the sun would be at that very day at that time. There are a couple of more things which I will not go too much into detail right now, like rendering, cropping the view, or unlocking or locking the 3D view, which is not really important actually. Most of the time, if you want to crop the view, you will use it within the properties of our view, which is the same command. Crop is actually shows our frame, and then we could crop it. See. More important are the goggles over here, temporary hide isolate. So if I select an element, let's real quick uncrop it, so that we can see everything right now. So if I select an element and click onto the goggles and say hide element, it will disappear. That wall will disappear. Only the door is visible. And to give you or to let you know that Revit has hidden something, it gives you that cyan, I guess it's called, frame where it says temporary hide isolate. So something that has been hidden to inform you about that. If you want to unhide it back again, you just go to the goggles again and say reset, and it's back in there. You could also go to select that wall and press HH on your keyboard, which is a shortcut to hide an element. To bring it back again, go to reset, or another command which you might use is that bulb over here, and it says reveal hidden elements. So once I click on it, it shows all the hidden elements within our view, and as you can see here, our wall has that cyan lines, and that tells us, okay, that element, that wall has been hidden. You can just click on it and say reset, for example. Once we are done with bringing back all of our elements, we could just click on here on that X, toggle reveal hidden elements, or just go to our bulb, and we're back in our, like, let's say, normal display. Another thing you will find in the canvas when you're in 3D view is that view cube, and you can just click on it, drag and drop. It's, I think it's the same in Rhino or every other modeling software. You will always have that sort of view cube. You just click on it and drag it to pivot around your element. What you could also do is, for example, you could right click on it and say into a view, let's say floor plan, level 1, and it will have the same cut-off plane, it will have the same view perspective as your 2D floor plan. So if we put them side to side by clicking on WT, let's close that section real quick, you see it's the same view range. Could also do that for the section, for example, to really get real quick and 3D section. And you see that's our section in the 3D mode, and we could still pivot around it. That box over here is our section box. So we are still able to manipulate it in every way we want to. So if we want to have that section a bit different, let's say, you can just drag those arrows. Okay, so far so good for the user interface. Let's go to the next tutorial.